Want one word from you. Can the US win this World Cup, yes or no?
Yes.
When Zlatan said that, most people thought he had either gone absolutely insane or had been forced to say that in order to keep his job. However, if you look closer, what he said might not be that crazy, because the work Mauricio Pochettino has done for the US national team has been nothing short of spectacular. Ever since he came in, pundits, former players, and fans have doubted his commitment, questioned every single decision he made, twisted every word he said. However, he ignored all of that. He simply kept going, and the result of his work is something Americans have never seen before. This is how Pochettino changed football in America. The phrase "football is growing in America" has been everywhere for the past couple of years. More and more players from the USA were playing in Europe for the biggest clubs in the world. More and more stars were coming to MLS. The sport was getting bigger, the attention was getting bigger, the expectations were getting bigger, but the results of the national team didn't really reflect that. What was supposed to be the golden generation was not able to go beyond what previous, much less glamorous American generations had achieved. They were more talented, but they were not ruthless enough to get over the line. And with the USA hosting the World Cup in 2026, there were huge expectations for them to finally show the whole world how much football in the United States had progressed over the years. But 2 years before the World Cup, things were not looking good at all. The USA got knocked out of the Copa America group stage, Greg Berhalter was sacked, and it was clear that something had to change. They needed a world-class manager who could transform their identity, so they brought in Mauricio Pochettino. When Pochettino came in, he promised exactly what everyone wanted to hear: a new identity, a new winning mentality. Everyone starts from zero. Doesn't matter what your name is, if you don't work for the team, you will not be selected. However, his start was a disaster. He lost 4 games in a row, including a 4-0 thrashing against Switzerland, and the reaction was crazy.
Mauricio Pochettino should not even be their coach in the first place, because they're on track to have one of the worst hosting World Cup performances in history.
Whether it's the 11 he picks to start, whether it's the roster he picks to start the camp, whether it's the tactics he picks to start the game, whatever it may be, he's lost me.
I would just like to formally hold my hands up and apologise for even suggesting that Spurs should bring back Mauricio Pochettino a few months ago.
People were already calling for his head. They questioned whether he cared about the job. They questioned whether he knew the player pool. They questioned his decisions, his selections, his tactics. He promised a new identity, a new mentality, new standards, and yet it seemed like nothing was changing. However, Pochettino didn't give up. He knew he needed time to turn things around. In the Gold Cup, despite missing many of the biggest stars, including Christian Pulisic, the USA surprised everyone by playing high-intensity football with a squad full of young, hungry, and promising players. They lost the final against Mexico in heartbreaking fashion, but the tournament brought much more positives than negatives. Pochettino got to know more young players. He learned which players he could rely on in the future and which players he couldn't. And yet, people still kept questioning him. After every single squad selection, after every single match, people were doubting his decisions. But Pochettino couldn't care less. He had a clear long-term plan and kept believing in it. He was not afraid to leave out a big name if he wasn't 100% fit or had just come back from injury. And the biggest call came in November, when he left Weston McKennie out of the squad so he could stay at his club to convince his new manager, Luciano Spalletti. People were stunned by that decision. Tim Howard said he was baffled. He said, what more could McKennie do to impress a new manager than play 2 strong international games for his country? And yes, McKennie was a very important member of the squad, and having him available in camp for one of the last international breaks before the World Cup was very important. But Pochettino was looking at the bigger picture. Having McKennie in match rhythm and good form before the World Cup was even more important. Missing one international break with the squad is not ideal, but if he could stay at his club, convince the new manager, remain an important part of his club, and keep getting minutes before the World Cup, that would benefit the USA much more in the long run. Decisions like this show how far ahead of everyone Pochettino was. As loud as his critics may have been, he knew best how to prepare the team for the World Cup. And even though from the outside, opinions around the national team looked more divided than ever, inside the camp it was more united than ever. Pochettino was slowly building the core of the team he believed in, and they continued moving in the right direction. In preparation, they played multiple friendlies against teams that had already qualified for the World Cup. They had great results, they had good results, they had worse results, but every single game taught Pochettino and his players something. They continued making steps in the right direction, and when the World Cup finally came, they were more than ready. Within a few minutes of the game against Paraguay, all the doubts were swept away. Pulisic was electric and dangerous every time he touched the ball. The wingbacks were dominating dominating the flanks. Folarin Balogun offered a constant threat in behind and scored 2 goals. Weston McKennie was causing chaos with his movement. They were playing intense, high-tempo football. They had chaos, but they also had control. And if previously the USA were too dependent on their biggest star to perform, in the second game against Australia they proved they had no problem playing without Pulisic. They won the game convincingly and secured first place in the group. Can the USA go all the way? Probably not. As good as they have been, they are still not flawless. They still lack concentration for the full 90 minutes, and stronger sides will probably exploit that much more. But even though they have their flaws, this team can still go very far and finally show everyone that this is the golden generation everyone was talking about. And in the end, that is what matters. Subscribe and comment how far you think the USA can go.